In this video, we're going to look at the meaning and the structure of the present continuous tense. The present continuous has quite a clear concept. It simply talks about actions or events that are happening at the time of speaking, or right now. However, the structure of the tense is quite complex for a form which is taught early in a stage of a learner's development. In addition, there is a set of state verbs like love, like, hate, believe, and know, which are not typically used in the present continuous. This can be a bit of a challenge for students to differentiate between verbs which we can add ing to and verbs which we often don't. Finally, not all languages differentiate between simple and continuous verb forms, so this aspect of English is something which can be new and quite challenging for learners. In addition, the present continuous tense is also used with a future meaning, a form which is typically learned later in a period of study. But differentiating between the present meaning and the future meaning of a present tense can also be quite challenging. So it's really important that we start by introducing the concept of the present continuous using a clear timeline.
So as a present tense, remember that now appears in the middle of the timeline, giving us lots of space around now to talk about the things which are happening. In present continuous tense, we'll look at the meaning first. So this describes actions which started in the past but are not finished right now, which, in other words, actions which are happening right now at the moment of speaking. They're unfinished at the time of speaking, therefore they're still going on. We can also use the present continuous tense to talk about routines or series of actions which are ongoing at the time of speaking but are temporary. So again, like present simple, we can show lots of actions as a repeated sort of string of actions going across or through now. But if they're a permanent set of actions or a permanent state, we would use present simple. But for a temporary state, or one which is going to change in the future, implying it's temporary, then we would use the present continuous tense. In terms of other language in the sentence, which helps us to understand that it's the present continuous tense that's being used, we don't need a time reference because the tense already means right now. But we can use phrases like at the moment or more and more for changing or temporary situations or actions. To show the present continuous on a timeline, it's really important to highlight where the action starts. So we would use a point in time. I use a bar, which happens before now, so it starts happening in the past, and then the continuous action starts at that point and continues ongoing through now. For example, if we have a marker sentence such as this one, I'm explaining the present continuous, we can say that the action of explaining is unfinished at the moment of speaking. I'm still doing it now. So on the timeline, we would highlight the point where the video started in this example, and we would show that the explaining started at the point where the video started and then goes on and on through now, and I'm still explaining the present continuous right now into the future. Another example, I'm starting work early this week. Now, here's an example of a series of actions, because you start work every day, right? But because it's a temporary situation, only this week, we'd call this a temporary routine. We'd need to help students understand this by identifying the time period that we're talking about. So we might want to cut off last week and next week from our timeline and highlight the period which is in between those two bars. And we could say that last week finished and then Monday starts this week. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday represents this week or this working week. And the process of starting work early goes across that time period, starting on Monday, finishing on Friday, and then next week I might start work later again. Okay, so the form of the present continuous tense, being a continuous tense, we need to use a be auxiliary and an ing verb ending. So we have a subject followed by a be verb followed by an ing verb. And that be verb, remember, must be in the present because this is a present tense. So that means we're using am, is, or are, the present forms of the be verb. In a negative sentence, we simply take those auxiliaries and we change them to their negative forms. So am not, isn't, aren't, and then the same ing form or present participle finishes the verb phrase there. In questions, we can ask a yes or no question by starting with the auxiliary, then using the subject. Same grammar as in the present simple and the past simple tenses. Auxiliary, subject, verb. But this time the verb has an ing on the end of it to make it continuous. And in open questions, where the subject is what we're asking about in the question, we use that WH word, the who, what, where, when question word, followed by the auxiliary, subject, verb. So, why are you singing, for example? Or, where is he working? Right, so how do we teach the present continuous tense? A good way to address present continuous, to describe things which are happening now, is to describe pictures. When we talk about pictures, we generally describe them in the present continuous as if those things that we're looking at are actually happening right now. So, we can start by asking students to find a picture of their family or friends or some activity that they did on their phone, or to bring a favourite photo or a favourite painting or picture to class. Second, the students will need some verbs to describe what's happening in the picture, so they need to do some brainstorming to generate language to use when they're talking about or describing what's happening in the picture, or even what people are wearing, because that's a very common present continuous verb, wear. We often describe what people are wearing right now. Then, in groups, students can describe photos to each other, and the group can guess which photo they're talking about, for example. For a higher level, there's a good activity called a blind dictation, where one student looks at the photo or the picture and describes the scene so that their partner can draw it without seeing the photo. Really important that the other student cannot see the picture, otherwise it's too easy and the first student doesn't need the language to describe the picture and therefore won't use the present continuous tense. As the listener draws the picture, they can ask questions, again in the present continuous, to get the detail correct. If you set a time limit for the speakers to describe and draw and to ask questions, this really focuses on the interaction and the language that the students are using, rather than just getting a nice picture or getting the picture correct. We really care about the language that the students are using, not about their artistic ability. So get them using the present continuous as much as possible to find out about each other's pictures and to share each other's ideas. So a final task for the present continuous. Find a task or an activity which works well for you with the present continuous, and think again, does it cover all aspects of meaning, form, and use? Plan the activity out on paper and plan how you're going to present it through a picture or a photo where different things are happening, and plan out how you're going to really focus on those different aspects of meaning and to get the students really practicing the language in an interactive way. You can adapt the coursebook activity and you can include positive, negative and question forms for students to practice, just to give them that whole understanding of the form.